Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the Rustic Von Lodge. Up here at the Rustic Von Lodge for the weekend. Sorry for my slovenly condition. Wilkins, my valet, absolutely refused to come up here. He's afraid of wild animals, Wilkins is. I warned him, he's probably been eaten already by Roger Hotep, but he was warned the danger of staying at the manor alone with an undead mummy, but, absolutely refused to come up. We'll see. The fate of Wilkins remains unknown. And there are no barbers up here, so, I can't be expected to shave myself. So, sorry about that. Anyway, it is my weekend reading report where I talk about all the stuff that I read during the past week. And if anything shows up at the manor or showed up at the manor, I will show you that. And I did get a package that showed up at the manor, which is I got a book. I'm fairly certain it's a book. I don't know what it is. I knew it was coming. I was told it was coming, but I don't know what it is. I'm going to unpackage it here in front of you, because that's the kind of exciting stuff I do on my dumb channel. Anyway, let's talk about the stuff that I read this past week. During the week, it was extremely busy as usual. As usual, I didn't read as much as I wanted to. I'm seem to be averaging, about a book a week or something? And this week, I read Raphael Sabatini's Captain Blood. It's Captain Blood, which I read for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. Once again, I'm talking about Roger's Cheap Old Book Club when Roger isn't around, which is unfortunate. Oh well. It also worked very well for the new reading event, Spring into Adventure, which is all about reading adventure novels. I love adventure novels, particularly classic adventure novels, which this is. This was published in 1920, I want to say it was. Yes, 1922. It was published in 1922. So, over 100 years old now, this book. But it's fantastic. I enjoyed this book tremendously. What fun this book is. I've been neglecting Raphael Sabatini. I've read some of his books before. I've read this one before, but it's been years since I've read any of them. And I last read this, the only time I've read this, in fact, was when I was in high school. So it must have been probably 1988 when I read this. It was either 88 or 89. So it's been a few years since I've read this book. I've always been a big fan of the film, the movie of Captain Blood with Errol Flynn. And when I was a kid, whenever that movie came on television, it seemed to come on television a lot, I would watch it. And I really enjoyed that movie. So when I saw this book in the high school library, of course I had to take it home and read it. And I remember it was such a beat up copy. There were illustrations in it that all the high school kids had vandalized. It was a mess of a copy, but I remember really enjoying it. But you know how it is when you read a book, decades before, and you pick it up again. There's a lot of stuff you forget. And I forgot pretty much everything in this book. And it's wonderful, though. What a great adventure novel about Dr. Peter Blood. Now, Peter Blood is a doctor, but he's also an all-around badass who, had served in the military and had been in wars and on the sea and all kinds of stuff. But then he settled down to become a doctor, but was charged with treason, which he shouldn't have been. All he was doing was being a doctor, and he was treating somebody who was a rebel. But he got called in to treat this guy. And because he treated this guy as a doctor, he was charged for being a rebel. And he was put into slavery. He became a slave, and he was transported to Barbados, where he became a slave on a plantation. And So he was stuck there as a slave for a while. He was fairly well treated because he's a doctor, and so he was used as a doctor. And he managed to escape along with some friends. He took some other fellow slaves with him, and they all became pirates. And he became Captain Blood, the terror of the seven seas. So it's a great action-packed adventure novel and a pirate novel. And Captain Peter Blood, being a pirate would not be his first choice as far as careers go. He didn't really want to be a pirate, but he became a pirate because there wasn't much else for him to do. And he's a brilliant strategist and a great sea captain, and so he gained quite a reputation for himself. And this is just a book full of his different adventures and how he kind of redeems himself in the end. It's so much fun, this book. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend this book. If you've never read this book, read this book. Man, this book is great. And I read about half of it. I read about half of it during the week because I just didn't have a heck of a lot of time, which was unfortunate. You know, when you're reading a really, really good book, especially one of those books where you just don't want to put it down, it sucks when you only have a limited amount of time to read it and have to put it down and go do stuff you have to do. That kind of sucks. Real life sucks, just in case you hadn't noticed. Anyway, so I took this up here to the manor with me, and I didn't expect to finish it, but I just did this morning. I finished this book. Wow, what a great reading experience. Captain Blood. Roger picked a good one for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club for Captain Blood. So there you go. So that was that, Captain Blood. That was fun, but that wasn't the only thing that I read recently. Let me pull this up because I read this on the Magic Tablet. My cheap, crappy tablet. Let's see if you can even see. Yes, I read this. This is Conan the Barbarian, issue number 9. I think it was issue number 9. From Titan Comics. So this is the newest issue of Conan the Barbarian from Titan Comics. The new line of Conan adventures from Titan. And this is great. What a great issue. I think this is my favorite issue so far, which is saying something because this is a pretty great comic book. And we got this cool map, but it's of King Kull's era. This map has Valusia on. This is the map of Valusia. And I was like, what? And yeah, Jim Zub is still writing it, and Rob Delatorre is back. And Rob Delatorre is back. And look at that. That's awesome. And he just does a great job with this issue. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I won't tell you too much of what happens in the issue because it would spoil everything. But a lot of cool stuff happens. In fact, so much cool stuff happens in this issue. It's just, like I said, it's my favorite issue so far of this comic book. So Titan Comics still doing a great job with Conan. I've been really, really happy so far with what they've done with the new Conan comic. I mean, if it keeps up like this, I'll be a happy Conan fan. So there was that. Also, of course, I am reading Thor. I am very, very behind on Thor. I'm still on the 12th Epic Collection. These are the last few issues that came out before Walt Simonson took over the book. Walt Simonson, who was an artist on Thor before, during the 1970s. He returned in the 1980s to write and illustrate the book, and it was a legendary run. But these are the last few issues before that. These are still written, well, let's see. The last issue was written, at least, I think, by Doug Moench. But I think this was the last issue that Doug Moench does, maybe. We'll see. Anyway, this is where I'm at. I just finished this issue yesterday or the day before. I don't think I was able to read any Thor yesterday, which is tragic. This is issue 328. So the art at this point has been penciled by Alan Kupperberg. And it's been, and the stories have been kind of up and down. This one, the last few have been pretty good. But this issue has the return of Vince Colletta on inks. And boy, did this comic book at this point need Vince Colletta to come back. He was an artist on Thor before. He was an inker on Thor before. He inked Jack Kirby, and so now he's inking the comic book again. It looks like the next few issues are inked by Vince Colletta, and he's one of those inkers that some people just hate. Some people hate Colletta. Not me. I really like him, and I really like the work that he's done, and I really think that this book at this point needed him to come back. It needed him. So the return of Vince Colletta, that's awesome. And still a few more issues to read before I get to the stuff I really want to read, which is Walt Simonson's run. So still reading every issue of Thor from the first run of Thor. So that's that. I need to catch up on that. So perhaps next weekend I'll just sit around and read Thor and nothing else. We'll see. So those are the things that I've read, but I did get this package in the mail. Now this, I was told this was coming. This is from my friend Lise, who is a big Mary Shelley fan, and she actually sent me a couple books before. She sent me the Norton Critical Editions of Frankenstein and The Last Man for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. The Last Man. I read that last year. And so she's a big Mary Shelley fan. And she told me she had sent me a book. And so I'm just assuming it's a Mary Shelley book because she's really big into Mary Shelley. It was sent in this terrible Amazon envelope. You know, Amazon likes to send books in these Amazon envelopes so that they can be severely abused by the Amazon drivers and, you know, beaten and thrown around and stepped on and whatever else. So we will see if there's anything left of this book. We'll see if there's anything left. I brought this from the manor up here so I can unpackage it in front of you. And if it's all beat up and torn apart, we can cry together. So let's open up this stupid envelope and see what was sent. Okay, is it a Mary Shelley book I am unaware of? This is not a Mary Shelley book at all. This is Algon Blackwood, The Wendigo and Other Stories. Wow, this is Oxford World's Classics, The Wendigo and Other Stories. That's awesome. I didn't know that this existed. I didn't even know that Oxford had a volume of Blackwood. I mean, they needed one. I didn't know that they had one. Is this new? Well, let's see. When was this published? Because I don't remember this existing. When did you publish this? 2023. So it was just published last year? Or is it published this year? I don't know, but it's new. It's new. It's The Wendigo and Other Stories. So let's see what's in here. I'm a big Algernon Blackwood fan. So let's see what's in this new Oxford edition. Okay, it's got The Haunted Island, The Empty House, The Listener, The Willows. It needed The Willows, of course. It's, you know, The Willows is his greatest story. Secret Worship, Ancient Sorceries, The Kit Bag, The Man Who Found Out, The Face of the Earth, The Wendigo, of course, The Man Whom the Trees Loved, A Descent into Egypt, Anon, The Land of Green Ginger and the Doll. So this has a lot of the stories that are published in a bunch of Blackwood anthologies, but also some stories that are not very often published in Blackwood anthologies. So that's an interesting selection. And a few of those stories I don't remember. So I'm sure I've read them. Like The Doll, I know I've read, but it's been a long time. So that's great. Thank you, Lise, for sending this to me. That's really cool. Like I said, I didn't know that this existed, but it exists. Oxford now has an Algernon Blackwood volume. So that's fantastic. Like I said, they needed one. Algernon Blackwood is a fantastic author, great writer of horror and fantasy. And there should be more Blackwood out there. So now there is. Oxford has this, what looks to be a really cool volume. So yeah, I got to read that, actually. It's been a while since I've read Blackwood. So yeah, The Wendigo and Other Stories. That's awesome. That's fantastic. So there you go. That's everything. I will catch you next time.